Hi, everybody. This is just a brief video on an introduction to solving quadratic equations. So as a reminder, a quadratic or second degree equation is an equation that can be written like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A, b, and c have to be real numbers, but they could be integers, decimals, fractions, and a is not 0. So the big thing here with a quadratic is that you have this highest power of 2. So that's really what we're looking at here. Not every single quadratic has to be set up in this exact format to start, although that is a very standard form to be given. But the biggest thing that you're looking for to know that you have a quadratic is that your highest power is 2. So here are some examples of quadratic equations. 4x squared plus 2x minus 7 equals 0. So this is set up in that standard form. Here, x squared minus 9 equals 0. Also in the standard form, it's just that you have no x term, so there would be a 0x there. Here you can see that you have that highest power of 2, but it's rearranged, but it's still a quadratic. You can also have, fractions or decimals. This last one is also a quadratic. It's a little bit trickier to see, but if you were to multiply this out, you would actually see that the highest power there is 2 on an x squared. There is an x squared term there. So if you multiply this out and simplify it, you are getting that x squared piece. So these are all examples of quadratics. So again, although we like to have things kind of written in this nice organized way, they don't always come that way when we're solving them. Now, there are 4 main ways to solve quadratic equations. And then there'll be videos on each of the different strategies, just one at a time. But the 4 main ways are as follows. So some quadratics can be solved by factoring, some using the square root property, completing the square, and what's called the quadratic formula. Now, for factoring, this is a really nice strategy. So the pro here, or why you would want to use this, is that it can be pretty quick when the quadratic is easily factored. So the key thing here is you can only solve quadratics by factoring if you actually can factor it. Not every quadratic is factorable. Some of them are prime, or some of them may just be difficult to factor. So if you're struggling with factoring and it's taking you a long time, then that may not be the best strategy for that problem. For myself, I usually try factoring first, because if I can get those factors quickly, it's a pretty relatively quick process after that. But this is why we have many different strategies. So factoring is a really nice strategy, but not everything is factorable. The second strategy we're going to look at, and again, you'll have a video for each one, so it'll make more sense what they look like for each strategy. It's called using the square root property. Now, the pro here, or why you would want to use this one, is it works really well when all your variable pieces are squared. So for instance, let me look at the examples above. Notice how in this example here, the only variable term you have is squared. It's x squared minus 9 equals 0. And in this term as well, this last example, you have x plus 1 all being squared. So there's no other x's hanging around. They're only being squared. That is when this strategy is going to be really, really helpful, and it's very, very quick. For the first example and for the third example, it's not going to work because you have this extra 2x or 4x piece. So we're going to see that this square root property strategy works really well. It's really nice and fast, but all your variables have to be squared. So you have to sort of be missing that x term. Now, the last two, they work in all cases. So these are our go-tos. So let's say you've thought about using factoring, or you've thought about using the square root property and nothing is really working. These last 2 strategies work for all polynomials. And I'll show you both of them. So you may have a preference on one strategy over the other one. It is good to know how to do all 4 strategies, though, so that you're aware of them. Completing the square also comes into application sometimes, particularly with circles. So again, it is good to at least know all strategies so that you can use them when you need to. But we all do have our favorites as well. Like I said, for me, I tend to try factoring first. If I can factor quickly, then I just move on and use that strategy. Or if I can use the square root property. And then for me, and you'll see in the videos how it works, my next favorite is the quadratic formula. So I tend to like that one over completing the square. But again, I know all four strategies, so then I can pick and choose and see which is relevant for the different examples. And some of it is going to be trial and error. So as you're going through and you see a quadratic, if I look at this quadratic here, I may not know right away if that is factorable, right? I may have to actually try it. So there's no really easy way to just guess at which strategy is the best. You have to do a little bit of trial and error first. If I want to try to use factoring, I'm going to have to try to factor it first. But if I find that I'm not getting anywhere, then I would pause on that strategy and go to something different. Maybe, okay, now I'm going to try quadratic formula and move on. So these are the four strategies we can use to solve. And check out the next set of videos so you can see each of the strategies in action.